The number of bicyclists in the state of Maryland has been steadily increasing for years, and as fuel costs rise, bicycles are becoming a more common transportation choice. The infrastructure that supports bicycling in Maryland continues to improve, and people are increasingly turning to the bicycle as a legitimate mode of transportation. As bicyclists continue to move from simple recreational use to everyday commuting, errand running, and transportation for short trips, bicycles will become more and more prevalent on Maryland's roadways.
Law enforcement officers in Maryland play a critical role in bicycle safety. I'm John Brand. Before retiring, I was a police officer and ran a police bike patrol unit, as well as being a police cyclist instructor for the International Police Mountain Bike Association. I'm currently the bicycle coordinator for the Department of Transportation Services at the University of Maryland in College Park.
As a bicyclist, I'm a vulnerable user, just like Maryland's pedestrian and motorcycling population. We appreciate law enforcement's efforts to maintain safety for all of Maryland's roadway users. This video is designed to improve your understanding of Maryland traffic law and bicycle safety. Thank you for keeping Maryland's roadways safe for all users.
This police training program was designed by the Maryland Department of Transportation to enhance the safety of bicyclists and other road users, to help officers identify and enforce illegal behaviors most likely to cause traffic crashes between bicyclists and motorists, and to assist officers in the investigation and reporting of crashes involving bicyclists.
The course is divided into 7 sections and will be followed by a test.
An explanation of why this material is important to you as police officers. An overview of why bicycle crashes occur. A review of Maryland definitions for bicycle-related laws. Current 2011 Maryland traffic laws that also apply to bicyclists. A review of Maryland traffic laws that apply specifically to bicyclists. A review of Maryland traffic laws that apply specifically to motor vehicle interactions with bicyclists. And investigation of crashes involving bicycles. In the United States and Maryland, bicycles have been traditionally viewed as toys, and they're only just beginning to be accepted as a means of transportation. Adults have very little experience to pass on to their children, and much of the advice they give may be contrary to traffic law. In many parts of the world, a child's first bicycle is considered their first vehicle, and their understanding of traffic laws and how to coexist with motor vehicles begins when they first learn to ride. This bicycling culture is only just beginning to form in the United States. As bicycling becomes more accepted as a means of daily transportation, we'll see more bicycles on our highways. Our highway system already reaches everywhere that bicyclists might want to go. Bike lanes and paths will also help carry the load, but that infrastructure isn't nearly as widespread as our existing roadway system. New construction can't keep pace with the numbers of riders that are beginning to use their bikes for transportation, so the numbers of bicyclists on our roadways will continue to increase in coming years. Enforcement of lawful and safe behavior by both bicyclists and motorists saves lives and prevents crashes, but without targeted enforcement, neither drivers of motor vehicles nor bicyclists have the motivation to change their behavior. Continued violations of laws by bicyclists and motor vehicle drivers, whether intentional or unintentional, will lead to more crashes between motor vehicles and bicycles, and more fatalities, usually of the bicyclist. Education helps, but the real reason drivers obey traffic laws is enforcement from officers like you. Too many people, bicyclists, motorists, and even law enforcement officers misunderstand traffic laws that pertain to bicyclists. Some officers may personally view bicycling on the roadways as foolhardy and dangerous, and would not ride there themselves or allow their family members to do so. But all officers should respect the decision of citizens to exercise their rights to travel lawfully by bicycle on public roadways. Many motorists and officers may believe that bicycles belong on sidewalks instead of roads, and many bicyclists believe that they're safer if they don't obey all traffic laws. The law and traffic crash statistics don't support either of those suppositions, and it's often up to police officers to educate our public and prevent crashes. It's easy to think of excuses or reasons not to do bicycle-related traffic enforcement, education, or crash investigation, but the prevention of injuries and deaths is a very important part of a police officer's job. Changing and correcting the behavior of bicyclists and motorists to improve safety will help Maryland become a safer place for all roadway users. Some drivers just don't know or understand our laws, and some drivers know them but disobey them because it's convenient or because enforcement is unlikely. Focused traffic enforcement can educate those that don't know any better, and for those that know the laws but refuse to obey them, there are citations. Dangerous driving behaviors will only get worse if officers don't enforce traffic laws that affect the interaction of bicycles and motor vehicles on our roads. Increasing numbers of bicyclists on our roadways isn't a new phenomenon, but in recent years, those numbers have risen dramatically, and they're expected to keep increasing. The rise in numbers of bicyclists competing for space on our roads has vastly increased the number of interactions between bicycles and motor vehicles, and we need to be aware of the change and know the applicable laws. Even a small increase in traffic enforcement directed at bicycle-motor vehicle interactions could make a huge difference in public awareness and driver behavior. But this enforcement will be most effective if it's directed at the bicycle and motor vehicle violations that are most likely to cause crashes and deaths. Traffic violations that place bicyclists at risk can be committed by bike riders or motor vehicle drivers. But without enforcement, lawfully operating bicyclists, the most vulnerable users on our roadways, don't receive the full protection of the law. The court system and the public are also becoming more aware of the increase in bicycling in our communities. There's a strong correlation between traffic violations and increased crashes, injuries, and deaths on our roadways. It doesn't always take a citation to convince the public of the need to obey traffic law. In many cases, a well-explained warning can go a long way toward preventing a tragedy. When you observe young bicyclists riding in violation of traffic laws, take the time to stop them and educate them and their parents. Proactive education is always preferable to having to advise a parent of the injury or death of their child.
The only statewide form of data collection for bicycle crashes in Maryland is taken from crash reports submitted by police officers. If you've never or rarely filled one out for a bicycle crash, you'll understand why it's difficult to show where bicycle crashes are occurring or where our highway system could be improved to reduce risks to bicyclists. Improved reporting and data collection in Maryland will allow us to reduce bicycle crashes and fatalities simply by identifying and correcting places in need of physical improvement, like better signage or signals, bike lanes, or road surface improvements. Here's some of the recent data collected by Maryland. In 2011, there were a total of 700 reported pedicycle-involved crashes. 5 bicyclists lost their lives, and 588 people were injured. 100% of the fatalities were adults, with ages between 20 and 54. 24% of adults and 14% of the children bicyclists hit by motor vehicles were riding in dark, dawn, or dusk. There are many causes of bicycle crashes. Contrary to what many people believe, the most common cause of bicyclist injuries is falls. These are single vehicle crashes, unrelated to collisions with motor vehicles, and most go unreported unless the cyclist is hospitalized. There are many reasons that bicyclists fall, but numerous studies have shown that bicycle crash and injury rates are 3 to 10 times higher on sidewalks than they are on the road. This is actually pretty easy to understand. There aren't any rules of the road on sidewalks, no lanes, and no orderly flow of traffic obeying traffic laws. In addition, there are sidewalk obstacles like fire hydrants, mailboxes, fence and telephone poles, pedestrians, skateboarders, rollerbladers, baby carriages, dogs on leashes, and other sidewalk users. They're all unpredictable and dangerous to cyclists traveling 3 to 5 times the speed of most other sidewalk users. As bicyclists travel on sidewalks, they're also often in opposition to the flow of traffic in the parallel road, and as the riders enter and cross these roads, they're often positioned where drivers of motor vehicles don't expect them to be. Although state traffic law prohibits riding on sidewalks, it also allows local governments to make exceptions and to allow bicycles on their sidewalks. Notable exceptions include designated bikeways and the Ocean City Boardwalk during specific dates. If you're going to conduct enforcement of bicyclists on sidewalks, be sure you know your local laws. Wrong-way riding, riding against the flow of traffic, is the single largest cause of motor vehicle-bicycle collisions caused by bicyclists. Wrong-way riders aren't in the right place to be seen by other traffic, especially at intersections. They can't see signs or signals because they're approaching from the wrong direction. But most critically, they lose massive amounts of reaction time when contrasted with cyclists riding with traffic. Here's an example to illustrate why this riding behavior results in so many fatalities.
When a bicyclist is traveling at 10 miles per hour and the overtaking car is moving 30, the closing speed is 20 miles per hour, about 29 feet per second. When the cyclist is riding against the flow of traffic, the bike and the car are approaching each other. The closing speed doubles and is now 40 miles per hour instead of 20. That's a closing speed of 58 feet per second instead of 29. Both drivers now have only one half the time to react, and as the speeds increase, it gets worse. Wrong-way riding is a fatality-causing behavior that law enforcement can quickly eliminate. 1/2 of all child bicyclist crashes with motor vehicles and 1/4 of all adult bicyclist crashes with motor vehicles are caused by the bicyclist's failure to yield, often when entering roadways from a driveway, passing a stop sign or traffic light, or when moving left across traffic as in a lane-changing maneuver. Other motor vehicle bicycle crashes are caused by the motorist's failure to yield when they enter the roadway from a driveway, pass through an intersection, or start from a parked position. There are 2 additional types of crashes that occur when a motorist fails to yield to a bicycle. The first is when it fails to yield when it turns in front of a bicycle that is legally riding straight through an intersection. The second is when a motorist passes a bicyclist and then turns right too soon after passing, causing the bicyclist to crash into the motor vehicle. Clearly, enforcement of bicyclist and motorist behaviors that contribute to these crashes can reduce injuries and fatalities. What is probably the bicyclist's most feared crash is when they're struck from behind by an overtaking motor vehicle. This is actually a fairly rare occurrence that usually happens during times of limited visibility, between dusk and dawn, when the driver's view is obscured, blinded by the sun, or the driver of the motor vehicle is under the influence. Maryland law requires drivers to allow at least 3 feet of clearance when they pass a cyclist moving in the same direction to reduce the risk of these often fatal crashes. Most crashes at night are due to the low visibility of the bicycle rider, and most bicyclists riding at night don't have lights even though they're required by law. 24% of adults and 14% of children bicyclists hit by cars were riding in dark, dawn, or dusk. Enforcement of these violations, committed by bicyclists, will help prevent collisions and injuries. With the increasing number of bike lanes being constructed, another risk beginning to present itself is motor vehicles parking in bike lanes or driving in bike lanes due to inattention or to gain a traffic advantage. These behaviors can force cyclists to leave the bike lanes and suddenly veer into traffic lanes occupied by motor vehicles. Enforcement of these violations, committed by motor vehicle operators, will help keep bike lanes clear and safe for cyclists' use. One last cause of bicycle motor vehicle crashes is bicyclists that ride in the door zone, too close to cars that are parked along the edge of the street. Opening your car door into moving traffic may be against the law, but that's not usually much comfort to the bicyclist that just got doored. Studies have clearly shown that most motor vehicle bicycle crashes are caused by some violation of traffic law by either the bicycle rider or the motorist. So it should come as no surprise that you can reduce crash and fatality risk substantially if your motor vehicle drivers and bicycle riders simply obey existing traffic laws. Unfortunately, studies have also shown that there will be no compliance with laws if law enforcement does not enforce those laws. Our motorized traffic has had those laws enforced for many years, and we get compliance in most cases. But it is equally dangerous if bicyclists run red lights, fail to stop for stop signs, and commit other violations. If we ignore such blatant violations of the rules of the road, we're missing a chance to save lives. Later in this film, we'll highlight the violations by bicyclists and motorists that are most likely to lead to crashes and falls, and we recommend that law enforcement officers pay specific attention to these most dangerous violations.
Let's take a look at Maryland traffic law as it pertains to bicyclists. First, we'll talk about some definitions.
A bicycle is a vehicle that is designed to be operated by human power, has 2 or 3 wheels, of which one is more than 14 inches in diameter, and has a drive mechanism other than by pedals directly attached to a drive wheel. Bicycles are vehicles. A play vehicle is a vehicle that has 2 or 3 wheels, is propelled only by human power, and does not meet the definition of a bicycle. A vehicle is any device in, on, or by which any individual or property is or might be transported or towed on a highway, although segways are not vehicles. A bicycle way is any trail, path, part of a highway, surfaced or smooth shoulder, or sidewalk, or any other travel way specifically signed, marked, or otherwise designated for bicycle travel. It should be noted that a bicycle way includes bike lanes and bike paths. A bike lane is any portion of a roadway or shoulder designated for single directional bicycle flow. A bicycle path is any travel way designed and designated by signing or signing and marking for bicycle use, located within its own right-of-way or in a shared right-of-way, and physically separated from motor vehicle traffic by berm, shoulder, curb, or other similar device. It should be noted that shoulders and bike and walking paths are part of the Maryland highway system and are subject to the same rules and regulations. A moped is a motorized pedicycle. It's a human-powered bicycle that can operate with the assistance of a motor. It must have pedals and 2 or 3 wheels, one of which is over 14 inches in diameter. It must also have an engine of 50 cubic centimeters or less and 1.5 brake horsepower or less. Mopeds must be registered and must display an ORV sticker issued by the Motor Vehicle Administration. Drivers of bicycles don't have to possess any driver's license, but drivers of mopeds must possess a valid driver's license or a moped operator's license. Either will do. The shoulder is that portion of a highway contiguous with the roadway for the accommodation of stopped vehicles for emergency use or for use by bicycles and motor scooters. A sidewalk is that part of a highway that is intended for use by pedestrians. A crosswalk is the extension of the lateral lines of a sidewalk, or in the absence of a sidewalk, the corner-to-corner connections where roads meet at approximately right angles. It is important to remember that crosswalks do not need to be physically painted in the roadway. All corner-to-corner connections are considered to be crosswalks. The bicycle is a vehicle and has all the rights granted to and is subject to all the duties required of the driver of a vehicle. This includes the requirement to exercise due care and give warning. Bicycle riders are also considered to be drivers, that is, any individual who drives a vehicle. Bicycles must ride with the flow of traffic, not against it. Slower vehicles generally stay to the right, but only as far to the right as is safe and reasonable, which is often called as far to the right as is practicable. At the extreme right are unsafe conditions: drain grates, debris, broken pavement, parked cars, pavement joints, and other hazards. A bicyclist is not required to ride to the extreme right of a road when it is unsafe to do so. Narrow lanes occur when a lane is too narrow to safely accommodate a car and a bicycle side by side. The cyclist who rides along the edge has less room to maneuver, is more likely to be forced off the road, more likely to drive into an obstruction, and more likely to be cut off by a turning motor vehicle. On such narrow roads, it may be safer for a bicyclist to take the lane and ride in the middle of the travel lane. When that occurs, motorists are required to wait behind the bicyclist until they can safely pass. Bicyclists must signal their turns, using hand signals pointing to the part of the road they're moving to, and signal stops by pointing down with the left arm. Motor vehicle traffic law pertaining to passing and overtaking on the left applies to bicyclists. The same laws pertaining to passing and overtaking on the right also apply to bicyclists. It also needs to be mentioned that local ordinances may further affect bicyclists. It's important for police officers to know what local ordinances affect bicyclists in their area. Local ordinances can allow or disallow where bicyclists may even be allowed to ride, and these local ordinances may also require bicycle registration, even though it's not required by Maryland state law. Some Maryland traffic law is used almost exclusively for bicycle enforcement. Where permitted by local ordinance, a person may ride a bicycle, play vehicle, or unicycle on a sidewalk or sidewalk area. For the purposes of this subsection, bicycle does not include moped. Maryland traffic laws apply to bicycles and motor scooters unless, by their very nature, they cannot apply, as in the case of a law that begins, the driver of a motor vehicle may not do some behavior. A bicycle operator must be seated, and the bike must be equipped with a securely attached seat and footrests for each passenger. Clinging to or attaching yourself to vehicles on any roadway is illegal for bicyclists. Riding to the right. Bicycles operating at less than the speed limit must ride in the bike lane if one is available, or as far to the right as is safe and practicable, except when making or attempting to make a left turn, on a one-way street, passing a stopped or slower moving vehicle, avoiding pedestrians or road hazards. The right lane is a right turn only lane, operating in a lane that is too narrow for a bicycle and a motor vehicle to travel safely side by side within the lane. Bicycles are prohibited, with some exceptions, on any roadway where the speed limit is more than 50 miles per hour and on any expressway or controlled access highway unless there is an adjacent bicycle way or path approved by the State Highway Administration. In some cases, this will be a shoulder. A common complaint of bicyclists is that officers sometimes order them off of roadways they're legally allowed to use. Refer to the Maryland Bicycle Map for a list of exceptions, or contact the MDOT Director of Bicycle and Pedestrian Access or the SHA Bicycle and Pedestrian Coordinator for more information. Where there is not a smoothly paved bike lane, a bicyclist may use the roadway or the shoulder. Where there is a smooth bike lane, the bicyclist must use it, except that when safe to do so, they may leave the bike lane to overtake and pass a vehicle in the bike lane if it isn't safe to do so in the bike lane, when preparing for a left turn, when reasonable to avoid debris or other hazardous conditions, when the bike lane is overlaid with a right turn lane. A person may not operate a bicycle while carrying anything that prevents them from keeping both hands on the handlebars or that interferes with the view or the balance of the operator. Bicycles also have specific lighting regulations. If a bicycle is not discernible at 1,000 feet due to insufficient light or unfavorable atmospheric conditions, the bicycle shall be equipped with a white light visible for 500 feet on the front and a red reflector on the rear that is approved by the State Highway Administration and visible for all distances from 100 to 600 feet behind the bicycle when struck by the headlights of the vehicle behind it. Bicycles may have bells or warning devices, but they are no longer required by law, and they may not be whistles or sirens. All bicycles must have a brake that can stop the bicycle from 10 miles per hour within 15 feet on clean, dry pavement. If your duties require parking enforcement, this is where the parking limitations and allowances for bicycles are listed. Wearing headset coverings or earplugs or earbuds over both ears is prohibited unless they are hearing aids or hearing protectors specially designed so that they don't inhibit the wearer's ability to hear sirens or horns from another vehicle. Officers should keep in mind that this is only the case when bicyclists are operating on a roadway. Bicyclists are not restricted when off-road or on pathways. Bicyclists may ride two abreast only if the flow of traffic is not impeded. Bicyclists must exercise due care when passing a motor vehicle. A dismounted bicyclist may push their bike on the right side of the road or may choose to be a traditional pedestrian and walk on the left side of the road in the direction of oncoming traffic. Persons under the age of 16 must wear helmets when on bicycles, even as passengers. Drivers of vehicles that are going in opposite direction shall pass each other to the right.
Let's review motor vehicle violations that affect bicyclists.
Drivers of motor vehicles must exercise due care to avoid colliding when passing and must pass safely at a distance of not less than 3 feet from the bicycle. The law excuses drivers who have steered to pass a bicyclist with 3 feet of clearance if the bicyclist swerves and comes within 3 feet of the car. A person, not necessarily in a motor vehicle, may not throw any object at or in the direction of any person riding a bicycle or scooter. The driver of a motor vehicle must yield right-of-way to a bicyclist in a designated bike lane or shoulder if the motor vehicle driver is about to enter or cross the designated bike lane or shoulder. A person may not open the door of any motor vehicle with the intent to strike, injure, or interfere with any person riding a bicycle or motor scooter. If you're unable to determine intent, Section 211105 states that unsafe opening of door into moving traffic or leaving door open into traffic longer than necessary to load or unload passengers is illegal. Remember, there does not necessarily need to be contact between the motor vehicle and the bicyclist for a violation to have occurred, or for a motor vehicle driver to be found at fault if a bicyclist crashed as a result of an action taken by the motor vehicle driver. Driver may not honk horn on highway unless necessary to ensure safe operation. This means that motorists should not honk their horns to warn cyclists of their presence, but also covers aggressive motorists' attempt to frighten or scare bicyclists. In this section, we're going to discuss the key violations that lead to most bicyclist-motorist collisions. We'll start by identifying the most dangerous violations by bicyclists. These are violations that are never safe and put the bicyclist and any motor vehicles or pedestrians in the vicinity at risk. Riding against traffic, either on the wrong side of a road or against traffic on a one-way road. Riding without lights or without reflective clothing at night. Failing to yield right-of-way to other road users or to pedestrians and motorists, especially through stop signs, red lights, and crosswalks. Now we'll identify the most dangerous violations by motorists. These are violations that are never safe and always put a bicyclist at great risk. Fundamentally, drivers need to share the road with bicyclists, even if that means waiting for a few seconds to pass safely or let a bicycle proceed through an intersection. The most dangerous violations by drivers are failure to yield the right-of-way to a through cyclist going straight through an intersection when the driver is turning. Failure to allow 3 feet of clearance when passing a bicyclist going in the same direction. Driving or parking in designated bike lanes. When you see any bicyclist or any driver violating any of these key provisions, you'll make a significant contribution to the safety of everyone lawfully using the roads by stopping the driver or bicyclist and at least issuing a warning. In this section, we're going to discuss crash investigation. We'll start by defining a bicycle crash as an event in which a cyclist hits or is hit by another object or falls off the cycle. Crashes aren't accidents. They may be unintentional, but they are avoidable and were caused by the actions or inactions of one or more of the participants. Your crash report will probably be the only saved data. If you don't write a crash report for bicycle crashes, there won't be any data to analyze problem areas or for making future traffic enhancements. Here are some things to consider when you're investigating bicycle crashes. Never assume that the bicyclist was at fault. You'll need to gather important data, including the age and gender of the rider, witness statements and/or comments, any injuries that occurred, any damage that occurred, any suspected traffic violations, any evidence of impairment by any involved party, descriptions, drawings, and photos of the crash scene, and roadway and environmental conditions that include lighting, glare, weather, pavement conditions, visual obstructions, lane width, speed limits, pavement markings, traffic signals and signs. Skid marks are less common for motor vehicles, but bikes still do not have ABS brakes and will leave skid marks. You should also look for the driver behaviors and/or violations that led up to the crash. You should also examine the vehicles, because motor vehicles are much more standard than bicycles. For bicycles, you should especially note the type of bicycle. Is it a mountain bike, a road bike, or a recumbent? What's the make, model, color, and serial number of the bicycle? Does the bicycle or the rider have any safety equipment, like lights, bells, or helmets? When in doubt as how to conduct your investigation and determine fault, remember that the bicycle is a vehicle. Conduct your investigation exactly as if 2 motor vehicles were involved. This will help you to determine the violations and who's at fault in the accident. A collision is not necessary to find fault or issue a citation to either driver. If the bicycle crash results in a fatality, regardless of any involvement by a motor vehicle, the crash scene is a crime scene, and a crash reconstructionist should be called to investigate. Do not move any vehicle until documentation is complete.
In closing, we need to remember that the state of Maryland is strongly promoting the use of bicycles
As a mode of transportation,
and their use on our highways will continue to increase.
we all have friends and relatives that bicycle, and we want everyone to have a safe riding experience. Police officers need to be familiar with traffic laws that pertain to bicycles to help that happen. Bicycles are vehicles, and if they do their best to behave like vehicles and are treated by other drivers as vehicles, the roads are safer for everyone. Maryland's police officers are uniquely positioned to be a significant factor in reducing bicycle motor vehicle crashes by educating all road users and enforcing traffic violations that create the greatest crash risks for bicyclists and motorists alike. For bicyclists, these critical crash factors include riding against traffic, riding without lights at night, and failing to yield right-of-way to other road users or to pedestrians. For motorists, these critical crash factors include failure to yield to through cyclists when turning, failure to allow 3 feet of clearance when passing bicycles, and driving or parking in bike lanes are all illegal behaviors that lead to bicycle motor vehicle crashes, injuries, and deaths. Remember, it's important to investigate crashes that involve bicycles to the same extent that you'd investigate any other crash. Education, enforcement, and crash investigation and documentation by law enforcement officers are essential.
We can help reduce crashes, save lives,
And help bicycles and cars safely share Maryland's roadways.